Many of you will know from previous events and so on, Kim Winter is our counsellor who provides the counselling sessions by phone or face-to-face or any which way she can, really. And she's going to talk about dealing with diagnosis.
It's nice to get a clap at the start. It's always encouraging. So I'm going to be peering at you slightly because I've just started wearing contact lenses. So I'm realising I can actually see all your faces for probably about the first time in about 2 years when I've done this. So it's like, oh, it's rather exciting. So I'm aware that a number of you here will be very, very newly diagnosed. You might have been diagnosed in the last year, say. And I guess we sort of think of you as newbies in that regard. And some of you will be diagnosed for much longer, maybe several years. Some of you look familiar to me already from other years here. So what I've tried to do today is try and put something together that will be relevant for all of you, whether you're very new to this process or whether you've been living with your condition for much longer. And the reason for that is in part is that often when we think about diagnosis, we think of initial diagnosis. But when you're living with a long-term condition, it's a bit like sometimes you get another diagnosis. You might be rumbling along with your condition for a while, and then another lump or bump or something happens. And it might have been over there, and you're sort of going along with it, and then woof, you've got to deal with it again. So really living with MEN and associated conditions is a bit like having to learn to be re-diagnosed all over again. So it's about diagnosis, and then another diagnosis, and there we go again. And you do get better at it over time in a funny sort of way, recognising the feelings that come up and learning to live with them. But let's start with thinking what those feelings might be. Okay. So when we're thinking about dealing with diagnosis, this is what I was saying. It's about thinking it happens over time. It's not a one-off event. There's the early days. Then there's the ongoingness of it, the routine scanning, the blood tests, the going for the endless appointments where you feel like you should get a little Michelin or loyalty card for your hospital. Yeah? Then you've got freebies every time you go. And then sometimes there's what we call re-diagnoses. You've kind of been living with it, and then you go and they go, well, we've noticed something we want to keep an eye on here. And you go, I wasn't expecting that. It's a bit like being re-diagnosed with something. And we talk a lot about finding the new normal. And if you're here for the first time, that's the phrase we quite often use, finding a new normal. So there is a number of background factors that will affect how you feel about your diagnosis. And I just want you to think about your first experiences of hearing the news that you had the condition you have. To some extent, you might feel differently about your diagnosis, whether you found out through testing, through a family member who had the condition. And then you've been tested and you find out you have it. But you might not have had any symptoms. Sometimes it can feel a bit unreal. Sort of, what is this thing? Does it really mean much to me? I don't know. Sort of have a different relationship to it. To if you've been symptom-led. A number of people here I know will have had quite a long journey to diagnosis. You might have been going to lots of different consultants over many years and they've been shaking their head and going, I don't know, go and see this person, or are you sure, or, would you like to go and talk to one of our psychiatrists maybe, and have a chat with them? Sometimes there's very circuitous routes to diagnosis. So how you feel about when you're told the news that you have this condition will depend very much on what your journey was to that point. It will also be informed by what you know of other people who have the condition. Sometimes it can be quite difficult if you've had a parent who's really been struggling and then they get a diagnosis, and then you find you have it. And it's very important to remember that everyone's journey with this condition, these conditions, is different. It's a very individual process. You will meet people here who are living with their condition and having symptoms from it in a very different way from you. How those close to you respond, that can be very key. We're very sort of permeable to how other people respond to what's happening to us. So you might say to a family member, well, I've got this thing and I'm not sure what it means. Oh my God, what are you telling me? This is terrible news. What are you saying? It tends to stir anxieties. Then if someone else that you talk to says, okay, well, we don't quite know what that means. Tell me more about it. Let's think about it together. The attitude of the person breaking the news can make a big difference to how you feel about receiving your diagnosis. Sometimes when I talk to people on the phone and we go back to the beginning, we talk about what was it like when you first received your news. And often it's very helpful if people are quite calm but quite pragmatic about it. Yes, you have this condition, but we're going to look after you. This is the team that's going to be working with you and how this works. Our anxiety levels then often go, okay, I've got this thing, but we're going to deal with it. You're going to look after me. It's very different to if you have someone who breaks the news and says, I'm terribly, terribly sorry. This is very bad news. I know this is going to be very difficult for you, but it really is the worst. You have it. It's sort of like, dun, dun, dun. Instantly, your anxiety levels go up. So sometimes it's important to go back and think about what was I introduced to as the ideas of having about my condition at the very start. And obviously your age and your life stage at the time you get your diagnosis will inform how you feel about it too. I'm always really impressed by our young people and our children, and of course you're very flexible at that age. You tend to sort of, you're often dealing with quite a lot and you're quite good at shouldering things. You've got this condition, right, okay. All sorts of other weird stuff is happening to me in my life. I'm a kid, okay. I'm processing this as well, right, let's get on with it. It can be a bit different if you're a parent or you're older and you're thinking, oh golly, what does this mean? And all sorts of other worries crowd in. So sometimes it can be useful to go back and think about what's my journey been to this point? Where did it all start? And how has that shaped how I feel about it now? And we're going to look at the 6 other aspects that impact on how you deal with your diagnosis. And I would call it diagnoses. Yeah? How you deal with your diagnoses over time. We talk about managing your feelings, we talk about family and friends, your medical team, your support networks. Living with uncertainty. You will get so good at living with uncertainty in living with these conditions. And about being kind to yourself. So your feelings. I'm not going to dwell on these too much, but one of the things that I always feel is very important when we come to days like this is it is not just about learning how best to deal with your symptoms. How you feel about living with your condition makes dealing with certain symptoms much easier or more difficult. And these are often the sort of feelings that are around when you first hear the news that you've got a lifetime condition. Someone was describing it to me recently and they said, it was literally like I couldn't hear for a moment. I just went temporarily deaf. I knew the consultant was speaking, but it was just words coming out. And then I had to go, sorry, can you just say all of that again? Okay? Because we have a natural inbuilt mechanism where if something feels an awful lot to deal with, another part of us kicks in and just goes, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Later. Yeah? And then we let the information soak in as we feel able to. So have a think about that. These are all the feelings that might be around at some point. And depending on your temperament, they might hit you like a bit of a wave right at the start, or they might creep up on you a bit later on. Sometimes in the first year, you're so busy having scans and tests and blood tests and running around. It's not until things settle down that you really start thinking, well, hold on, how do I actually feel about this? What's going on for me? So I'm going to talk briefly about dealing with difficult feelings. And I'd encourage you to sort of, I think we put these up online, don't we, Joe? Where's Joe gone? I think we make these accessible. I'm not expecting you to remember these, but just take them away and think about them in your own time. Often we spend a lot of time trying to keep difficult feelings at bay. If I don't think about it, it's like it's not happening. And then we get really grumpy with people, or we get really tearful, or we start kicking the dog, or things like that. So sometimes we have to slide feelings into view. We have to go, okay, yeah, I am feeling frightened, or I am feeling angry. And actually that really helps, because we spend a lot of energy keeping feelings at bay that actually we can more usefully use in dealing with them. Don't judge the feeling. Feelings are in themselves not good or bad. They just are. What we do with them is important. Kicking the dog is a bad thing. Okay? Feeling angry is not. Okay? Deciding how you need to respond to a feeling. What do you need? Do you need to go somewhere and just be quiet? Do you need to talk to someone? Does it help to do some exercise? Are you someone who finds drawing or painting or creative things helpful? What makes having that feeling a bit easier? Learn that the feeling will pass. All feelings pass. We love holding on to the good feelings, but they pass as well. Difficult feelings pass. You know that lovely bit in, have we got any Lord of the Rings fans here? Lord of the Rings fans? There's that lovely bit where Gandalf, and he stumps his staff down and he says, all things shall pass. Yeah? Sometimes that's really good to hold on to when you're in the grip of a really difficult feeling very frightened. Sometimes when you're feeling frightened or anxious, it really helps to bring that, if you've seen it, it helps, that image of Gandalf into all things shall pass. Okay, they do over time. And notice what and who helps when a feeling visits. Yeah? Notice what you need. Now, I'm not going to talk much about this because I know someone's talking about this later, but finding your way to your medical team is really important. And it's a relationship. It's a relationship that may well be there for life. And like any relationship, it's one that sometimes you have to work on. It's a bit like sometimes you have to teach your medical team how to work with you. I need this from you. Can you give me that? Sometimes there's little blips in communication. You don't feel listened to, or you don't feel they've got something. Don't write them off. Go back to your medical team, go back to your consultant and say, look, that didn't quite work for me. I felt a bit dismissed last time, or I felt you didn't get hold of something. Think of it as a relationship over time. They've got their bit and you've got their bit. You need to be in it together. So communication is key. Make a list of phone numbers. Okay, you'd be surprised how much better you feel knowing who you can contact about what and when. Get a really nice notebook. Write down what happens in your appointments, what you need to do next and who said what. Because you will walk out of your appointment and go instantly blank. Okay? It just happens because it's so stressful. Even if you feel quite chilled, it's really hard to retain information that at some level probably makes you anxious. I am huge on rewards and treats. Okay? If you have to go to hospital, which let's face it, is never usually that much fun, okay? You need to give yourself a treat afterwards. We're good at doing it for our kids. We're not always very good at doing it for ourselves, okay? So always build yourself treat time in afterwards. If there's nice shops, nice cup of coffee. We did have one lady who was saying that her shoe habit had got a little bit out of hand because she had so many appointments. But it is really important to say, well done me. I've done a horrid thing. I've gone and had to do something that is a good, big, grown-up thing about looking after myself. But it wasn't much fun, so I'm going to do the fun thing now, okay? Do that. It does help. Okay, build your support network. Now, I'm sure you've all done, like all of us have at different times, terrified yourself with the help of Dr. Google. Okay? It's really easily done. It's particularly easily done with rare conditions because often the information might be a bit out of date, or it might be not entirely checked, or a little bit left field, let's say, a little bit unusual. So try and stick to trusted resources like Amend or the Net Patient Foundation. In your own life, it can really help to understand who gets it and who doesn't. Who you can raise something about your condition with, and they will engage with you, and you feel they're taking something on board. And those people that you have to accept, for whatever reason, may not feel comfortable or able to engage with you about your condition. And often that's very disappointing. And it's fine to go away and stomp and be cross about it. But actually accepting it is going to help in the long run. Work out who's got ears to be able to hear what you need to say and who hasn't. Yeah? Concentrate on the people who've got ears for it. Just let it go with those who haven't. Seek support online and in person. You're already doing something huge by coming here today in terms of looking after yourself. It's a really, really helpful thing to do. And Joe, I know, has talked before about the Facebook groups and the online support that we have too. Use them wisely. They're there to be supportive. If you find they are making you more anxious, give them a bit of a break. Yeah? And don't forget that sometimes when people are using online groups, it's because they are very actively engaged with a difficulty with their condition. If you're not actively engaged with a difficulty with your condition, you're probably on other things on Google. You're browsing, cat videos and where you're going to have your dinner. You're not necessarily on one of the Facebook forums. As I said, use Dr. Google and social media wisely. And don't struggle alone, particularly with a rare condition. Again, it's why coming to something like today is so important. Just being able to be in a room where you know that other people are dealing with something similar to you is so helpful. I remember someone coming to one of these once and they said, literally, I just want to go around and look at everyone. And I want to go, oh, you look like me and you look really normal and you've got this too. And there's something just so comforting and helpful about that. Now, you will get, I have to say, you will get so good at this. You might not think it now, and you might be sitting there going, oh, I don't like uncertainty. I'm really bad at it. You will get good. You will get good in part because you have to, okay? You will develop, you didn't know you had not knowing muscles, did you? They're sort of down here somewhere and here. And you will get great big not knowing muscles, because part of living with a long-term condition like this is that you don't know when there's going to be a problem very often. You cross your fingers, you have your scans, you have your results. Oh, that's another one got through. That's another one got through. You might have surgery or you take medication. I don't really know how it's going to affect me. And your consultant goes, oh, most people are completely fine. A couple of people have this reaction and you don't want to worry about that. You're going, that'll be me, I'll have that one. Okay? Being able to go back to the position of not knowing being able to say it is all right to not know is a skill that we learn over time. We're back to Gandalf. All things shall pass. Yeah? We're very good at filling not knowing with our imaginings. Yeah? Oh God, this is going to happen. What if that happens? What if this happens? What if that? Someone was telling me recently they went for surgery and they were like, okay, I can do this. This is absolutely fine. I'm psyched for surgery. I'm a bit scared, but it's all right. And the nurse then goes, and so if you could just sign your form, and obviously the last bit is obviously you could die. What? What? No one told me this. Exactly. And it's so frightening because you're in that place where you're zen. I'm dealing with it. And then they go, yeah, and obviously you've got general anaesthetic, so you could die. That's not helpful. Obviously they need to tell you, but you're just managing. Woof, there's your anxiety up again. Okay? Becoming expert at waiting. Waiting for test results. Waiting for appointments. Waiting for a nurse specialist to ring you back. It might be that we have waiting muscles, but you'll develop those too. Learning to be patient. If you weren't patient before becoming a patient, you will become patient by being a patient. Okay? That's why you're called patient. Okay? Staying with the present moment. Mindfulness can help. If that's something that you've not heard of or you've heard of and a bit interested in, it is all about finding ways to bring yourself back to the present and to live in the present. We're very good at filling our minds with worries about things that have happened or worries about things that might happen. Right now, for example, we're all good. Nothing's happening apart from the fact you're listening to me in this room. We're all cool. You might be sort of feeling, oh, I need the loo in a minute. That's all right, you can go in a minute. I'm wondering what's for lunch. Will there be anything I like? We don't know. Let's wait and see. Okay? So this is all about being in the moment right now. And really, this is about saying, when you are living with something like MEN-SDH-ACC, you are living with something that the vast majority of other people are not doing on a daily basis. And as such, you are, by default, using a portion of your energy reserves, just rumbling along, called living with my condition. Okay? You do a piece of emotional work every day by living with it. Accept that you are learning and you are honing your skill called living well with my condition. No one expects you to kind of get it off pat all the time. It can be a bit of a roller coaster. You feel like you're cool with it. Okay, I've had all my tests, had all my scans, I'm taking my medication, it's all fine, we're doing this thing, go for your appointments. Got a bit of a problem with one of the results. What? I was not expecting that. And suddenly you're back in again to those feelings of anxiety or fearfulness or worries about your future. Okay? So you will live with this at some points better than at other times. And that's all right. You don't have to be perfect. You are allowed to kick the dog sometimes. You're allowed to be grumpy with your partner sometimes. You're allowed to be very tearful sometimes. It's what we're like. But I can't say this enough. Do take on board rewards and treats. You know, they're really important in keeping yourself going when you're living with this. And remember that you are not on your own. One of the things that people say to us a lot is that when you're first diagnosed, you feel very isolated. You usually haven't heard of the condition. In some ways, it's much easier being diagnosed with a condition like breast cancer or, or multiple sclerosis, or because everyone goes, oh yeah, I know someone with that. Yeah, everyone's heard of it. So I've been diagnosed with multiple endocrine neoplasia. Okay. Is that a bad thing? Well, yeah, I think so. It's this, and this, and this. Right, okay. Well, anyway, so I'm off on holiday next month, and people don't know how to respond. And that's why it's really helpful to come to things like this, because other people will get it. Yeah, it's back to that. Find your way to people who get it. Okay, and I just put this up really because, you know, you're listening to me, but actually it is as important, if not more so, to listen to each other. And these were just some quotes I jotted down from people who have spoken to me over the years. I wouldn't have chosen to have this, but I do see life differently now. I don't sweat the small stuff as much. I used to be stressed out all the time, but I think I'm probably nicer to be around now. And then a young woman called Maddie. It's weird. It's part of who I am now. I wouldn't be me without it. I'd be someone else, and I don't mind who I am. Even my scar, which I never thought I'd say. I was really frightened at first, but I've learned to accept the ups and downs. I feel good about realising I'm stronger than I thought I was. And really what we're saying here and we're saying today is this is about hopefully going away from an event like this and feeling a little bit more confident and a little bit less anxious about living with your condition. And as you look around the room, you are very much not on your own with it. Okay? So if anything does happen during the day and you're feeling wobbly or you feel it would be helpful to talk to someone, come and find me or find Joe or any one of us, and we will help in any way we can. Because certainly what we want is for you to go away feeling better from a day like this, not more worried in any way. Okay? So, and come and find me later on. If there's anything you want to ask me, feel that you can. Okay? Right. And I'll hand over.